It has recently been confirmed that both Tyson Fury and Anthony Joshua have signed contracts agreeing to a two-fight deal. As long as every other detail gets resolved soon, we could expect one of the biggest fights of the decade to take place mid-2021, so perhaps June or July. The deal both fighters agreed on pretty much takes care of the money side of things. They'd agreed that the first fight would be a 50-50 split for each of them, while the rematch would consist of a 60-40 split where the winner of the first fight would take the most money. This being the biggest fight you can currently make in boxing, and possibly in all of combat sports right now, we can expect both Anthony Joshua and Tyson Fury to make way more than $100 million given there will be two fights. The only major details that are left to be resolved are the location and the specific date. Since Tyson Fury has stated that he wants to fight twice this year no matter what, we can expect this detail to be announced either sometime this month or sometime in April. On the other hand, the location of the fight is going to be a very important factor since it will determine the amount of money each fighter makes. I believe the frontrunners of the fight's location are Saudi Arabia and Africa, since as far as we know, those are the ones who have offered the most money. I know we will all have preferred this fight to take place in England, since both fighters are British, but I think that since not many people would be allowed in the stadium anyway, it doesn't really matter. What I mean is, why make the fight in England if the stadiums and arenas won't allow many people in anyway? I believe that making the first fight somewhere like Saudi Arabia for both fighters to make the most money and then take the rematch to England is the smartest move and what makes the most sense right now. But whatever the case, they pretty much have around a month to determine these details and get everything 100% confirmed. I believe it's pretty much a fact that this is the biggest boxing fight that could be made at this point in time. We don't know if it's going to be a competitive fight or not. For all we know, this could end up being a one-sided matchup or even worse, a boring fight. You could argue that a fight between Errol Spence and Terence Crawford is more of a guaranteed competitive matchup. But at the end of the day, you can't argue of there being a bigger fight than Fury vs Joshua nowadays. This fight is a world-paralyzing event, since not only boxing fans will watch, but all sports fans and even people who have never even watched combat sports are guaranteed to be tuning in into the fight. What I mean is that this fight is so big that it transcends the sport of boxing. Even if you're a boxing fan, and for some reason you aren't really excited for this fight, you at least have to admit that this fight taking place is something that benefits the sport of boxing as a whole. Having a fight so big, it even makes non-fans watch, and having an undisputed heavyweight champion of the world will only benefit the sport of boxing. But why is this fight so big and important compared to every other fight out there? Well, firstly because this will be a fight to unify all the championship belts in the heavyweight division, meaning that this fight is between the two best boxers in the division, and we all love to watch the best fighters fight against the best fighters. And watching one of them become the undisputed heavyweight champion of the world is incredibly exciting. Another key factor other than the fact that it's a unification bout is that the heavyweight division has always been considered the most appealing division in boxing throughout all of its history. People often say that boxing as a whole is doing good when the heavyweight division is doing good, and right now the heavyweight division is the most appealing and interesting it's been in over 10 years. This means that this fight is a fight between the two best fighters in the most exciting division in the sport, where all of the championship belts are at stake. And I believe that this fight gets even more appealing when you take into consideration that both fighters are incredibly charismatic. This fight isn't between just two champions, but between two showmen and superstars. So, not only can we expect a great fight between these two, but we can also get excited for all of the interviews, press conferences, and events prior to the fight, since both fighters know how to excite the fans, taunt their rival, and bring entertainment for all even before stepping into the ring. But now, the big question is, who is going to win the biggest boxing fight in the world? Right now, the opening betting odds seems to be favoring Tyson Fury as the winner of the fight. But why is it that most people think that Fury will win? Well, there's several reasons. One of them is simply that it's known fact that Fury has a much more polished and efficient boxing technique than Joshua, meaning that Fury has a better movement, defense, and ring IQ than his opponent. Tyson Fury is probably the best technical boxer in the whole heavyweight division right now. Another reason people slightly favor Fury is because he just recently beat the former world champion Deontay Wilder in a dominant fashion. Deontay Wilder is probably the hardest puncher in the whole history of boxing. And despite that, Tyson Fury was able to change up his strategy of being slick and moving around the ring to a much more confrontational strategy, with which he ended up beating Wilder by TKO after dropping him twice in the fight. The problem here is that the only reason Fury decided to fight that way in the second fight against Wilder was because he knew that Wilder didn't know how to box going backwards, meaning that Fury knew that if he pressured Wilder to fight while moving back, then he would be able to catch Wilder while the American made several mistakes. The thing is that Anthony Joshua showed everyone that he does know how to fight going on the back foot, as he fought that way in his rematch against Andy Ruiz Jr. This could mean that while Fury was effective going forward against Wilder, it might not go as well against Joshua, since Joshua is a much better boxer than Wilder. On the other hand, you have to think as to why Joshua wasn't willing to stand in the middle of the ring and trade punches with Andy Ruiz in their second fight. It really isn't a good look when you win while moving around the ring after in the first fight you got knocked down 4 times. But the fact is that Joshua did what he considered was necessary to win, even though it didn't look spectacular. If I had to rank Fury and Joshua in the heavyweight division, I would say that Fury is the best technical boxer in the whole division, while Joshua is the most balanced fighter. Joshua isn't as technically sound as Fury, but he hits harder than him. And Joshua doesn't hit as hard as Wilder, but he is better in terms of technique. So pretty much what I'm trying to say is that even though Joshua doesn't excel in those aspects, he does possess a good potential in both of them, making him a well-rounded fighter, while Fury does excel in technique but lacks in power. Let's remember that Fury gained plenty of weight for his rematch against Wilder, meaning that he had to gain weight in order to attempt to knock Wilder out, and it worked out perfectly. Another thing we have to consider is that Joshua has never fought a guy like Fury, a guy that is great at moving around the ring, making you miss and evading punches. So if Fury decides to use that strategy, which is actually how Fury naturally fights and how he has fought all of his career, we can expect Fury to have an advantage over Joshua. If I had to guess, I think that Fury will not fight going forward like he did against Wilder, but will fight like he has always done in every other fight of his career, being elusive and on the back foot. While on the other hand, it's pretty much a safe bet to say that Joshua will fight going forward and not going backwards like he did against Ruiz. I think the fight will resemble Fury's fight against Vladimir Klitschko. Most people say that even if Fury gets dropped by Joshua, it's very likely that he would be able to stand up and keep going, because he already got dropped twice by the biggest puncher in the history of the sport, and he stood up both times. But the same thing goes for Joshua. Every time he has been dropped in his career, he has always stood up and kept going. A lot of fans think Joshua has a weak chin, or a glass chin as many people call it, meaning that Joshua is easily affected by big punches, and is most likely to get dropped when getting hit clean. But it's very likely that since his defeat against Ruiz, he has worked on improving defensively, which could perhaps play a role in the fight if Fury decided on a "I'm going forward until I knock you out" strategy. Right now, all we can do is speculate and make educated guesses based on the careers of each of them. But what do you think? Who will win this fight? Do you think it will be a close matchup, or will it be a dominant performance by one of them? Do you think we will see a knockout? Don't forget to leave your opinions in the comment section below, and remember to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and click on the notifications bell. Thanks for watching, I'll see you in the next video, goodbye.